Hello everybody, my name is Emilio Q, and on today's video I'm going to go ahead and be talking about my experience when it comes to filming with the Fujifilm X-T3. The previous video that I made was just simply a very simple video reel. I just wanted to go out with this camera. I wanted to play around with it when it came to recording video. So most of the shots that I filmed on that previous video, it was either handheld or the camera was locked on to a tripod. So it was nothing crazy, it was nothing fancy, it was just a video that I wanted to make. And this video is pretty much a follow-up video talking about my experience filming with this camera and what I like about this camera when it comes to filming. Let me go ahead and start with the autofocus. I'm going to go ahead and swallow my own words because on a video that I made not too long ago on this lens, I talked about the autofocus and how when it comes to the autofocus, you do not hear much noise on the lens when it's recording video on the camera. And after making a video, I learned that you do actually hear a little bit of noise on the lens itself when it's recording and when it is doing autofocus. Yes, you do hear a little bit of noise, but the autofocus is so fast and it's honestly not that noticeable, and it doesn't bother me all that much. I would feel like if you were at some big major event where there's a lot of noise, say if you were probably at a concert, maybe at a wedding, the autofocus noise would not be as noticeable if you're in an area that has a lot of noise. I mean, it is noticeable, yes it is, but it is not as noticeable as other lenses, and the autofocus is still fast, which I love quite a lot. Whatever I point the camera at, it'll just focus specifically on what I want the camera to focus on in less than a second. Alright, let's go ahead and get on to the next subject. I'm going to go ahead and talk about how I like to basically adjust my ISO and my shutter speed. I'm not really an expert on why or how you need to adjust the ISO or the shutter speed. Sometimes I get those two confused sometimes. Like I said, I'm no professional. I'm still learning when it comes to the science and the specs of camera bodies. But one thing that I like is that if I'm gonna go ahead and shoot like at noon, if I'm gonna shoot between say 12 o'clock to possibly 6 or 7 o'clock, I like to keep the ISO at around 400 or 500 just to be safe, and I'll adjust it a little bit from there. Shutter, I don't really see how I like to adjust the shutter. I just adjust the shutter to my liking, and I don't really like to use these button dials right here. As much as cool as they are, I mean, I love the look of these dials right here and the appeal that it gives to this camera. However, I feel like I might drop the camera. I feel a lot more safer using these dials right here. When it comes to adjusting the ISO on the camera, I use this dial, and when it comes to adjusting the shutter speed, I use the back dial right here. To me, it's a lot more faster for me, and I feel a lot more safer. I don't feel like I'm gonna, adjust the button dial like some amateur and then drop the camera. But yeah, I know that shutter and ISO is actually probably one of the most important things that you should learn when it comes to playing around with a camera. If you're using Fujifilm, Sony, Canon, Nikon, whatever, that's something really important, and that's something you need to learn. And I know that's something that intimidates a lot of people when it comes to photography, because they don't know anything about the shutter, they don't know anything about the ISO, they don't know how to adjust the camera settings on the menu. And I gotta say, I was actually really intimidated when I first turned this camera on. I was completely lost on how to adjust this camera, and I still am. I'm still learning, and I do know that there's a lot of other things that I have to learn on this camera. Just a quick little brief story. I worked at Best Buy for a very brief period, and so many people wanted to buy a camera, of course, because they have kids, they have families, they want to take pictures of, their kids' graduations or their baseball games. However, they're always intimidated with the camera bodies, no matter what brand it is, because, is it user-friendly? How do I use it? I'm so confused, I'm so lost. So, they even have their own cameras that they bought, and they want to switch to another camera type of brand because they do not know how to adjust the ISO or the shutter. that's just something you gotta learn, and that's something even I have to learn. So it's intimidating right now for me because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm learning, and yeah, I'm seeing what I like. When it comes to the ISO, I just like to keep it at either 400 and 500 because to me you're not going to get that much noise. You're not going to get much of that, video noise, which actually annoyed the hell out of me a lot when I made a couple of videos on the Canon TI5. I want to say that's what you call it. I made a video, if you look at one of my early videos from 2 years ago, you can see the noise and the grain on that video, and it looks really horrible. So anyways, yeah, I just like to keep the ISO at 400 or 500. Shutter speed, I just basically adjust it to my liking when it comes to video or for photos. Alright, another thing that I want to talk about real quickly, even though I feel like this deserves its own video, is the aperture. This is my first type of digital camera where when it comes to the lenses that the camera producer produces, they have their own aperture ring, so you adjust the aperture on the lens, and I didn't really know much when it came to aperture. Basically all I knew is that I like to keep the aperture as low as possible. Right now I have the 35mm on f2 because when you do that it allows for the camera to let in a lot more light, it allows for the lens to let in a lot more light, and of course when it comes to doing talking head videos like this right here, or when it comes to doing pictures, you get of course the subject, like me, I'm the subject. That is really nice, it's in focus, but the background itself, like this, you get a lot more of a more blurry, milky background. You get that bokeh, however you like to say it. However, I learned that I liked using that, but when it comes to doing something like a landscape, or you're recording the video and you really want every single subject in the frame to be in focus, you have to adjust the aperture you have to make it a lot more lower. And right now I like adjusting it to either 5.6 or even adjusting it lower to like a 8 or 11. So I basically play around with it when it comes to filming stuff like in wide open spaces. Like in the video I made, I either shot somewhere in a field or I shot like in a street corner or something like that. So I basically adjust the shutter, because if you leave it at f2, you'll see that some things are pretty much kind of blurry, not in focus, but other things will be more in focus, kind of. And one thing I actually learned just from watching a couple of YouTube videos, because like I said, I'm kind of an inspiring filmmaker, and on my YouTube feed, a lot of how-to filmmaking type videos are on my YouTube feed right now. I saw one by the name, I forget the name of the YouTube channel, I'll put it somewhere on the video. Basically there was a YouTube video basically talking about and explaining why f2.8 is really important, and it's actually something that a lot of major films use, because it's kind of perfect because you want your subject to be in focus. However, you still want the subject to have a blurry background, but the background, it still gives you an idea of what is in the background while at the same time being blurry. I also adjusted it to 2.8. I think that would be perfect for when it comes to like if you were making a film scene where you say two characters are talking outside in a street corner, but you don't want everything to be fully blurry. You would want to adjust your ISO to 2.8 because it'll show a lot of light, and also it'll give the subject background, a really nice background where you can get a good visual idea of where the characters are talking. So that's why I learned apparently 2.8 is very popular, and I'm going to focus on that a lot more when it comes to making more videos. One more thing that I want to talk about when it comes to playing around with the Fujifilm X-T3 are the film simulations. I haven't really used or experimented with all of them, but here are the two that I like the most. I love using Velvia, which is the Vivid film simulation, because to me, when it comes to making videos, I like for the videos to be very colorful. It'll be something that will make the videos pop. However, when it came to using the Velvia for recording video, I wasn't really a major huge fan of the Velvia video quality. I love the Vivid image quality more when it comes to taking photos. However, when it comes to video, it's okay. Maybe I just don't know how to adjust the video itself when it comes to using Velvia. I'm pretty sure it's a good film simulation for something more in like a low light quality type of space, but if it's broad daylight and you're shooting everything recording video in vivid film simulation, just to me personally, the imagery I wasn't really a big fan of. The earlier half of the video that I made previously, I actually shot most of that in Eterna Cinema. When it came to shooting in Eterna Cinema, I do like the imagery. However, I wasn't a big fan because it wasn't as colorful and it just didn't capture, it just wasn't as appealing to my eyes as the vivid type of imagery is. But when I edited everything on Final Cut Pro, I didn't do anything too complicated. I just adjusted the color and I adjusted everything when it came to the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows, and I adjusted the saturation a little bit more. I didn't do anything too crazy, but it gives the video a lot more of a better image. It's a lot more appealing, and it's pretty much how I like the colors and the vivid imagery to look on the video. So basically what I learned is that right now I love to record video on Eterna Cinema, and I love to adjust the colors and the video to my liking when it comes to shooting on Eterna Cinema, going on Final Cut Pro, and then just adjusting everything from there. So that I like quite a lot. There are other film simulations that I want to experiment with and use. But anyways, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. This is basically all I wanted to say about my experience when it comes to filming with the Fuji camera, what I liked about it, minor things that I didn't really like about it, but like I said, they're not really bothering me at the moment. But anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Be safe. More videos will be coming out very, very soon.